talked to my friend Jay Santos in a long time, but he's got something to say here, the voice of the Bucks. By the way, I'm Marky Billson, Tri-City Sports Now. Is going to be, well, I hope that you're going to be getting a raise because, and I think that I have announced this incorrectly, but ETSU just signed a multimedia rights agreement with Wagner Sports and Entertainment that will provide for them $15 million over the next 10 years. This sounds pretty decent. Jay Sandos, but to the lay person, this isn't like, ETSU just got the quarterback from Temple to transfer to their abode, or the center from Indiana to come in and play for Steve Forbes. What is this multimedia rights agreement going to do for ETSU other than give them a nice check?
Well, I think the first thing it's going to do, and if I could liken it to just so fans have an idea, Wagner is a similar type company to IMG and Learfield, and so their forte is really to come in on the business side of things and handle the sales and the marketing and have access to maybe bigger fish in the pond where, right now, issue the majority of our contracts, we have some clients that are, kind of statewide, representation, but we really don't have something that maybe a regional, the southeast or something of that effect. So they've got better contacts to kind of get that, and whether it's in a group we don't have, like an insurance or something to that effect. If I can liken it to sort of Ballot Health, we have a healthcare provider here, but it's in the region, and we may be the only game in town for them, but there could be national brand to use insurance as just I don't have that category, so I can't make anybody mad. But if you're doing a Farm Bureau, a Geico, or something like that wants to buy multi-universities to get better bang for the buck, that kind of helps you get into that play. But it's a very similar type deal to what Tennessee has with IMG and Chattanooga, for that matter, with Learfield. So it really frees up. The biggest thing is we're going to have 3 people come in and handle a majority of the sales and the fulfillment of all the contracts. And honestly, the last 6-7 years, we've had a lot of turnover at ETSU, and a lot of us have just had to pick up more jobs. And so the biggest thing for us is a lot of people that were really dealing with the development side, tickets and all that, can kind of go back into that realm. For me, I can focus more about radio, TV, some of the digital things we do, and not have to worry about the sales aspect of it. So cash on hand is going to be a little over $10 million. Some of that $15 million is really going to be budget saved. So, we're not paying for the radio rights anymore. Wagner will buy the radio rights. They'll pay some TV stipends. They'll be able to pick up contracts for website providers and things that we were having to pay out of pocket for. Now we get to keep that money in-house. And again, they'll have 3 full-time benefited people added to the staff that's going to come out of what they make and what they do. And so we get added staff out of it as well. So a lot of positives. We're trying to look down that route, Mark, probably 3 or 4 different times since we started the network. And we finally got to a point to where it made sense financially with what people are offering. In years past, what they were offering wasn't necessarily a good deal, and it wasn't going to make a lot of money for the university, so we never went that route. And now with football being back, certainly success that basketball's had, and just the vision of where we're going, and honestly the changing landscape, I'm sure has something to do with that too. And a company like Wagner starting to gobble up properties that aren't in the Power 5, and they've been able to make a nice little niche out of it, and we fit the bill for what they want to do as well.
Well, yeah, this is not, this is big because, when I started following ETSU sports, the radio contracts have got to be similar to, let's just say, how maybe a high school would be there. A station bid on the rights or something. I know that it was a big thing when KPT lost them and they went to WJCW. There's no sense in trying to hide the call letters here. This is a bygone era, and it was, now you've got to keep Chip Kessler. That sort of thing was part of the deal. But what you're telling me is now, you mentioned IMG. I've worked for IMG But I want to ask you, with this new company, with Van Wagner, are you going to be in a circumstance now where, say, the pre- and the post-game shows will be broadcast out of Johnson City, or will they be broadcast in a remote location, just like I used to drive into Winston-Salem to do the pre- and the post-game for Tulane. Okay, that's a couple of years back. But will that be the arrangement? Will we have kind of people on remote and professional broadcasters giving the pre and the post, and then you go take it at the field, or how's that going to work?
Well, Van Wagner is unique as opposed to Litterfield 9G because they actually don't have studio capability. So one of the key things that was attractive and why we actually got more money than a lot of the other schools that they have is because we have such a solid backbone in what the particular side of the house that I have, which is the Buccaneers Sports Network, that we do all of that, create commercials, all this other stuff with the content and stuff we have. So for me, it's really good because I get to keep all the creative control, and I get a house where it's at. I don't have to deal with, like you're saying, somebody drives in that may or may not know anything about ETSU that's making, some sidecast to be our pre- and post-game host. We'll still have everything here. So as far as what I do, it's going to be business as usual. There won't be much of a change on how anything is handled. I still have all the rights to hire the people that are going to be on air. If you kept all the talent rights that will be on air doing their broadcast and color, sideline, ESPN3, if it's school produced, we're able to keep all that. So that's something that really wasn't the selling. The time was important and getting the spots that they could sell. But as far as the creative control of that wasn't a big sticking point with Van Wagner, which suits me just fine, to be honest with you.
So the going back and forth that you normally do during your broadcast with, say, when you run down the sponsors with the producer back in the studio, that's going to continue that unique part of ETSU sports. I do imagine we won't lose that.
Yeah, everything that so far that we've been able to do, we'll continue to do. Like I said, that was a big thing for me when we were talking with everybody, and IMG and Learfield, and those companies were on campus when we hosted the schools and did an open bid for it. They did make an offer. Clearly wasn't to where Van Wagner was, but we would have lost that capability with the particular companies that bid on us. But with Van Wagner, we keep everything as is. So everything, the way the game and the flow of the sound of our broadcast will continue to be the same.
So, yeah, I will I will say I do hope that the analysis, it's more than just score more points in the past and all that. I do want that. But anyway, talking to Jay Sandos, voice of ETSU, I do want to ask you this. Have you heard anything more about whether the games will be, the football games, on ESPN or ESPN3 this season, the football games, for instance? ESPN Plus or ESPN3?
Right. And that's the biggest thing. The short answer is no. ESPN, the way they wrote this contract, and they wrote it very strategically a few years ago, which didn't make sense then but makes sense now, is that they're going to be able to free flow, and they choose what's going to be on free and what's on plus. So the league can make some suggestions, but ultimately ESPN owns those rights, and they pay the league $500,000, I believe, a year for those rights. So they pay a good chunk of change, so they will have to say what we've been told so far is that they are going to try to alternate so that not every game is going to be on ESPN Plus, but try to get as close as they can to 50-50 for a certain school best they can. Now, I'm a little skeptic about 50-50. My guess is it might be closer to 30-70 as far as the games that will be on ESPN3 as opposed to ESPN Plus. But ETSU won't have to say. Southern Conference can make a suggestion, but ultimately the powers to be in Bristol, Connecticut will make that ultimate decision.
I see. So it looks like to see all the games, if one wants to, online, they'll have to pay the $5 at some point, but maybe not all the time. Talking to Jay Sandos, voice of ETSU, I do want to ask, In this regard, I've been talking a lot about how, say, in 10 years, talked to this with Jake Wimberly down the zone in Jackson, Mississippi, college rights as we know it, even conferences may totally change. You might be having schools, be they ETSU, be they Notre Dame, be they Tennessee or Virginia Tech, trying to negotiate their own deals with not necessarily just networks, but internet companies, Netflix, Amazon, YouTube, that sort of thing, to broadcast their own games. The idea being, hey, you know what? Amazon actually has more money. And what I want to ask is, in any ways, do you see this as being a first step for maybe ETSU to get into that game, where maybe in 10 years, ETSU is going to be trying to negotiate their own rights deals to broadcast their games on an internet company? Could this be the first step to that?
I mean, it could. We actually have the right to negotiate our own regional deals. We can't go beyond regional. Similar to when we played the Tennessee game, and we were able to put down 4 stations throughout the state of Tennessee and kind of makeshift our own thing. We have the ability to do that now, but it's a caveat to that is there's some regulations. I can't pre-sell everything. There are a few rules here and there. There are some exclusivities that ESPN currently owns, but we do have the right, because honestly we don't have a linear TV site right now. What we can't do is actually sell the web base. So we actually tried YouTube Live a couple years ago and got a cease and desist from ESPN that they own all the internet rights through the school. So we've gone down that a little bit already. Just as the conference contract calls, I can get us on regular, if you will, quote unquote, regular TV, linear TV, but can't do anything with it there. But the way the landscape's changing, I mean, it's really hard to predict really what's going to happen in 10 years. But having a company like that, Wagner has some other properties, would help us if the big Power 5 decided to break off and do their own thing, and NCAA shifts into morphs into something that we haven't seen before. I think it will go that way at some point. I don't know about 10 years, but 15, 20 years for sure. I think that is going to happen in some form or fashion, a reshift of everything. And then I think we'll just have to see how that shakes out, and if the league will continue to exist, NCAA exists, or if it's just going to be a free-for-all for everybody.
Well, I know that this is a very tough question to ask you, Jay Sandos, to speculate on, but where do you think ETSU falls into that deal? It would seem unlikely that they could be, let's say, one of those 40 or, say, Big 5 broadcast teams, listen to me, programs that would break off, as is speculated about. But where do you think ETSU would lie when all the dominoes would fall in such a scenario?
Well, it's a good question. It's a question we talked about, not at length, because again, you're hard to predict, and you can only prepare for what you prepare for. But I believe what will end up happening is about 65, 70 teams will end up going in whatever the Power 5 will be called, whatever that is, Super League, whatever. I think there'll be about 60, max maybe of 80, give or take, somewhere in there, and then everybody else has got to figure out what they're going to be. Are the other schools going to continue to play with 85 scholarships and get everybody else up to that? Will the other schools fall back to 63? My guess is that the FCS and the rest of FBS are going to have to figure something out. I mean, it's not going to make sense for another 40, 50 schools to just be in their own realm with nothing really to play for, because the other schools have frozen out with their own deal. So
yeah,
there will be a merger of some kind where that means that they'll convince the 63 scholarship people to go up to 85, or will those 85ers have to come up to 63, which most of them at some point in time, relatively speaking, most of them were 63 at one point. So that's really which domino is going to fall. But one's going to have to go up and one's going to have to go down. I think it's totally inconceivable that we still have basically 3 Division I. One of them at 85 by the Power 5, and the other 85, and then the 63 scholarship, FCS, 1AA, old school 1AA. I don't think they're going to go 3 Division I. So that's going to be how that domino will fall. And ultimately, heard this was real outside the thinking box where they were talking about totally restructuring football altogether as its own animal and then allowing all the other sports to recreate their conferences, which would be great because geographically, what if we could be in a league, still with App State and everything but football, or other schools like that, and you could get really a good league. Leagues could really do a better job of putting themselves in better geographic spots that would help everything else, and then just leave football alone as its own animal. Similar, honestly, to what maybe the CWSAA does in football, the weird 6A in football, and nothing else in the world is above a 3A. And so you have everybody playing in different leagues. That's not probably the greatest comparison, but it's something I think everybody can relate to locally. So I think that's what would make the most sense. I don't know what will happen, but I've heard people kind of bounce that around at the NCAA level. Hey, why don't we just restructure football conferences, restructure football in general, and then make everybody else, figure out the rest? Because certainly I think if you gave App State some truth there, I'm sure they love the Sun Belt football and doing all that, but I'm sure their volleyball team doesn't like having to fly, out to Idaho and everything else that they need. They would much rather get in a bus and play UNCG and get in a bus and play, UNCA and play ETSU, and would make more sense for them at that level. And same thing with basketball. I think you can still do that. Plus, I think ETSU at that point could figure out what basketball league they would want to go in, and could maybe figure out, hey, let's get a couple of these, since we're just worried about basketball and other sports, we can get together a strong league and let the football team be in whatever league that's going to be.
Okay, and I think what you just spoke of is essentially what Liberty is trying to do a little bit, going independent in football, and then now with the A-Sun in basketball, they're trying to make their own way in football. I guess the one question I could ask, and we can all talk about the decision to drop football 12 years ago or so, but you mentioned, a basketball with Appalachian State and ETSU and such. I might actually make the argument that Appalachian State is still in the Sun Belt, not as prestigious a basketball program as is ETSU. Otherwise, why would Patrick Good be transferring? Local, but, Boone isn't exactly across the earth here. But what I'm asking is, do you think we could ever see the day where ETSU and Appalachian State were quasi-equals in football? I do remember how dominant Appalachian State was after '81 in the Southern Conference with ETSU, but nevertheless, do you think we'd ever see those days where they're, somewhat comparable in terms of scholarships, fan base, etc.?
That's the hope. And that's honestly, that's the $1 million question. And that's when everybody talks about the standard for what you want to be. I think everyone points to App State for a school our size. Similar enrollment, where we're located, all the other things. And I think that's where you want to go. Winning will ultimately determine if you can get there, and not just winning, but you got to be able to sustain what App State was able to build and sustain, not just for the 3 national championships, but they've had a winning tradition for a long time of football in ETSU in 80-plus years. Let's just be honest, Marky, I can't hide the history books, right? You can open them up and see. There's not that much winning tradition, and I think that's what they're trying to do. And I will say this, the good thing about ETSU and the stadium, they learned from other schools on how to build a stadium that was easily expandable because of the war stories on how App State had to rework their stadium, and other schools have had to figure it out. The stadium right now really seats as far as seats. I think it's about 7,600. Now you can get more in there because of the berm, but you could easily put I think it's going to be tough for them to justify an FBS jump and stay independent that long as a full Division I member.
Yeah, well, I do though say, and you mentioned the money coming into Liberty, when they decided to make their football program into an FBS school, I did fear, they've got to work something out with the conferences. I mean, I do get that, but a lot of people think that Liberty could be the Baptist Notre Dame, and I wouldn't be so surprised if in 10 to 15 years people thought of Notre Dame as being the Catholic Liberty. Honest to goodness, I mean, I think that when you consider just, how people think about that university and the influence it's having, I mean, on everything from the presidential election to, you watch the news and they're talking to Liberty, and also the strides that their athletic program has made, it wouldn't surprise me. It really wouldn't, the location being there in Virginia. Yeah, and to tell you...
Don't they have their own TV channel, too, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about schools making their own broadcast agreement. This is what, like I said, I mean, it was big back in the day. Oh, well, we'll be on NBC every home game here at Notre Dame. Liberty might have the ability to just dwarf that. And it's a long way from when the one game ETSU didn't lose in 1985 on the gridiron was to Liberty in that tie. And for that matter, it's a long way in Johnson City when, I don't know if you ever heard this, Jerry Falwell attended the game and he asked to be picked up at the airport on Johnson City's finest limousine company. And in 1985, Johnson City didn't have a limousine company. That's an old story right there. Tell you what, look up on Facebook, and you can see what Johnson City and the ETSU campus and the mini dome looked like at that era. No University Center. Greenwood Drive didn't go to State of Franklin. State of Franklin wasn't there. I mean, just look at the picture on our Facebook page, 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities, and it'll take you back to, really, is it that long ago, the mid-'80s? Jay Sandos, it looks like ETSU is going forward. Hey, $15 million more coming into the athletic coffers. Maybe they can do something now about John Robert Bell and naming rights and the stadium, or even my dream of a new arena. Tri-City Sports Now coming back after this.